It was a little past midnight when the phone rang. Not my mobile, not the landline either. We don't even have one anymore. It was this old rotary phone I had picked up from an antique shop last fall, mostly as decor. I never plugged it in. It didn't even have a cord. The sound of it ringing made my chest tighten. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but the sharp trill of the bell cut through the silence with such clarity that sleep couldn't have faked it. I stared at the black shape sitting on the hallway table, bathed in pale moonlight leaking through the window. It rang again. Loud, crisp, impossible. I didn't move for a while, just lay frozen in bed, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was a noise from outside. Maybe a neighbor's phone somehow echoed through the vents. Maybe, but none of it made sense. That phone shouldn't be working. After the third ring, it stopped. Silence returned like a blanket. I stared at the ceiling, listening for footsteps, for wind, for any sign that I was still tethered to reality. My apartment felt the same, quiet, still, familiar. But something in the air had shifted, like the pressure just before a storm. I forced myself to get up. My feet hit the cold wooden floor, and I made my way down the narrow hallway. The phone sat there like it always did, its coiled cord hanging uselessly, the dial resting at 0. Nothing out of place, and yet everything was wrong. I reached out and touched it. Cold, heavier than I remembered. I lifted the receiver and pressed it to my ear. Static. Not soft background fuzz, but violent crackling static that surged into my eardrum like a scream underwater. I almost dropped it. But through the noise, for a fraction of a second, I swear I heard someone whisper my name. My blood went cold. The voice wasn't familiar, but the way it said my name, it was like it knew me. Not just my name, but everything about me. It said it with a kind of grim intimacy that I can't explain, like the way someone might say a secret they've kept buried for years. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice trembling more than I'd like to admit. No answer, just static. Then silence. I stood there, receiver in hand, feeling foolish and unnerved. Eventually I hung it up and just stared at it. I told myself I was tired, that maybe it was a stress dream or some weird auditory hallucination. I'd read about those. Back in bed, I left the hallway light on, just in case. At exactly 2:47 a.m., it rang again. This time, I ran. I don't know what compelled me, curiosity, fear, adrenaline, but I practically stumbled down the hallway. The phone was already on its third ring when I picked it up. Again, the static. Softer now, then faint breathing, slow, steady, inhumanly calm. "Who is this?" I repeated. The breathing continued. "You need to stop calling," I said, my voice firmer. "This isn't funny." Then came the click of a tongue, one sharp, wet sound, like someone standing too close for comfort. Then a whisper. "I'm already inside." I spun around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me in the hallway. Nothing. Just the amber hallway light flickering slightly, casting odd shadows on the walls. I backed into my room and locked the door. I barely slept. In the morning, I checked the phone. Still unplugged. No sign of tampering. I even pried open the back panel. Dust, cobwebs, no battery, nothing electronic. It shouldn't be able to ring. It certainly shouldn't be able to transmit a voice. I told myself it was a nightmare, that I'd imagined the whole thing. But every night since, the phone rings. Always between midnight and 3 a.m. Always just a few times. Sometimes it's breathing, sometimes it's silence, and sometimes the voice tells me things. Things about my childhood, about people I haven't seen in years. about things I've never told anyone. Last night, it said something different. It said, "Pick up tomorrow. You'll want to hear this one." I didn't sleep at all. And now, as I write this, the time is 12:03 a.m. The phone is ringing again. I didn't want to answer it again. After that last call, I told myself I wouldn't. I even moved the phone to the back of the closet, wrapped it in an old towel, and shoved it behind a stack of storage boxes. But that night, right on cue, the ringing started. Muffled, yes, but unmistakable. The kind of sound that presses on your nerves like an itch you can't reach. It rang only twice. I didn't go to it. I stayed in bed, eyes open, staring into the dark, heartbeat loud in my ears. Eventually, the silence returned, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The air in my apartment felt heavier, charged like a thundercloud about to burst. The next night, it rang again, this time only once, just once, as if it was reminding me it was still there, still waiting. By the fourth night, I cracked. Not out of curiosity, not even fear, just exhaustion. I hadn't been sleeping. Every sound made me jump. I kept checking the peephole in my front door, kept turning on lights I never used. I felt hunted, though I didn't know by what. So that night, when it rang again at 1:16 a.m., I went to the closet, pulled it out, unwrapped it, and held it in my hands. It was already ringing when I picked up the receiver. I didn't speak. There was silence on the other end for a few moments. Then a voice. A woman's voice this time. Calm. Software. Almost comforting. "Did you enjoy your peanut butter and banana sandwich at age 7? I froze. My mouth went dry. That was a stupid little memory. I hadn't thought about it in years. I used to eat them every Saturday morning, sitting on the porch with my grandfather before he passed. No one alive knew that detail. I never posted about it, never mentioned it to anyone. Your grandfather used to whistle a tune, something about a bluebird, the voice continued. My knees nearly gave out. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. No answer. Just that same slow breathing again. It sounded deeper now, like it wasn't coming from the other end of the line, but from inside the phone itself. "Stop calling me," I snapped, trying to sound stronger than I felt. "I don't know who this is or how you're doing this, but you shouldn't have ignored her." The voice cut in, suddenly different. Male this time, gravelly, closer. I blinked. Ignored who? No response. Then, after a few seconds, a strange sound, like nails tapping on wood, rhythmic, slow, then static. Then it hung up. I stood there holding the receiver, my hand shaking. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. What disturbed me the most wasn't that they knew things. It was how casually they said them, like they were reading a grocery list from my soul. That same week, I started noticing small changes around the apartment. At first, it was barely anything. A picture frame tilted a little too far. My toothbrush moved slightly on the sink. A glass I didn't remember using sitting in the dish rack. I thought I was losing my mind. Then came the notes. The first was under my pillow. A small piece of yellow paper, torn from a notepad I didn't own. In neat, tight handwriting. "She's still angry." The second was in my coat pocket. "You shouldn't have lied." I didn't know who she was, but every night the phone would ring. And every time I answered, the voices got more detailed. One night, a voice described the scar on my left thigh. A scar I got when I was 5, running through the woods behind my aunt's house. fell on a broken glass bottle. I hadn't thought of it in years. Another time the voice asked, "Do you still keep the box under your bed? With the letters you never sent?" I felt sick. I hadn't touched that box in a decade. It felt like I was being unraveled. My memories weren't mine anymore. They belonged to something else now. Something that was watching me from beyond whatever boundary the phone bridged. Something that was peeling me open, layer by layer. Last night I didn't answer. I let it ring, over and over. It rang 13 times. When it finally stopped, I thought I had won. I even laughed. A shaky, broken laugh. This morning, I found my bedroom mirror, covered in condensation. I live alone. I hadn't showered, but written in the fog were 3 words: answer or regret. And tonight, as the clock ticks closer to 1 a.m., the phone sits on the table again, waiting. I know I'll answer. Because now, it's not just a voice on the line. It's a presence in my home, and it knows everything. The calls were no longer just interruptions in the night. They were chains, unseen but suffocating, slowly tightening around my life. It's strange how quickly the unnatural becomes routine. You tell yourself, just one more night. Maybe it'll stop. But it never does. And the worst part, I kept answering. Not because I wanted to, not because I was curious anymore, but because every time I ignored the phone, something happened, something worse than the calls. One night, I tried unplugging it again, even though it shouldn't work in the first place. I took it outside and left it in the alley behind the building, thinking that would be enough. That night at 2:11 a.m., I woke to the sound of ringing. Not outside, but inside. It was under my bed. The same damn phone, covered in dirt, still ringing. My skin crawled. How did it get back in? How did it even ring? But I was too scared to question it anymore. I picked it up with shaking hands, not even bothering to say hello. The voice on the other end, the words bounced around in my head for days. I didn't remember letting anything in. But what if I had? What if answering that first call had been a kind of invitation? Like opening a door you didn't even realize existed? After that, I stopped fighting it. I answered every time. The calls became more frequent, 3 or 4 times a night. The voices weren't just whispering anymore. They were talking to each other sometimes, carrying on full conversations I couldn't quite understand, as if I were on a party line in some nightmare dimension. Sometimes I heard crying, sometimes laughing, once, just the sound of heavy breathing for nearly 6 minutes straight. But what really broke me was the voice that sounded like me. One night, I picked up the call and heard myself on the other end. My voice, my cadence, my tone, but saying things I'd never said. "She knows you killed her," it said. I nearly dropped the receiver. "What are you talking about? She was there that night in the woods. You thought you were alone, but she saw." I could barely breathe. "I didn't kill anyone." The voice laughed, a perfect mimicry of my own laugh. "No, nor with your hands. But you let it happen. You turned away. You let her scream. And now she's coming." I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat the next day. My mind kept reaching into forgotten corners of my memory. Was it true? Was there something buried so deep I had forgotten it? Or was it all lies? But then things got worse. I started hearing the phone when I wasn't home. At work, in the break room, I heard it ringing faintly from my locker. I rushed over, opened it, and nothing. Just silence. In the grocery store, I heard it in aisle 6. A soft, distant ring, like it was calling me across dimensions. My co-workers started noticing. I was jumpy, paranoid, barely speaking. I stopped inviting friends over. Not that it mattered. Most of them had stopped calling anyway. And those who still did, I couldn't pick up. The sound of any ringtone made me want to scream. Then came the messages. I don't mean voicemails. I mean real messages, carved into things. Once, into my bathroom mirror. You heard her crying, didn't you? Another time, across my bedroom wall, etched in what looked like ash. You can't ignore it forever. I scrubbed it all off, repainted the walls, even bought a new mirror. But the next night, it was back. Answer me. And yet, I still answered. Because not answering seemed to invite something far worse. One night, I tried earplugs, noise-cancelling headphones. I sat in bed watching TV at full volume. Still, through it all, I heard it. That God-forsaken ring. I snapped. I ran out into the night, barefoot, phone in hand, screaming into the empty street. I hurled the phone into a storm drain and collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for air, trembling. People stared from their windows. No one came out. I spent the night at a cheap motel. And still, at 3 a.m., the front desk called my room and said, "There's a call for you." I told them I wasn't expecting one. They said, "The caller insisted." My stomach turned to ice. I picked up the phone. The voice said, "Running won't help. You belong to me now." I remember sitting there, staring at the receiver long after the line went dead, and realizing I was trapped. Not by the phone. Not by the voices, but by my own choice. Like a memory being played too loud. A high-pitched whine layered with that old familiar melody. It didn't come from the walls, or from outside, or from some speaker. It came from me. I fell to the floor, clutching my skull. I screamed. I begged it to stop. It didn't. And then I blacked out. When I woke, I was somewhere else. Not my apartment. Not anywhere I recognized. It was like a void. Endless, colorless, except for one thing. The phone. The same phone I'd tried to destroy. Black, rotary, sitting on a pedestal in the middle of nothing. It rang once, then twice. Then silence. I didn't want to pick it up. I knew what it meant this time. But I also knew I wasn't leaving that place until I did. So I answered. The voice on the other end was not human. It was layered, like 1,000 voices speaking as one, weaving in and out of each other like threads in a web. "You heard us," it said. "You saw her. You felt the moment crack." I didn't know what it meant. It continued. "When the veil thins, some of you see through. Most forget, but not you. You listened. Who are you?" I whispered. There was silence. Then the answer. "We are not from your world. We were never meant to speak. But you opened the line." Why me? Because you listened. Because you kept answering. You fed the current. You kept the door ajar. I tried to speak, but my mouth didn't work. My body didn't move. My thoughts slowed, thick like syrup. "You called us first," it hissed. And suddenly, memories I didn't recognize began flooding in. A campfire, a ritual, a dare I had forgotten. I was 14, in the woods with some friends. Someone had brought an old rotary phone, just like the one in my visions. We dialed random numbers into it, pretending to contact the dead. It was just a game, just teenage nonsense. But I remembered now how the air went cold, how the fire dimmed, how the phone rang on its own. I answered it back then. I had completely forgotten. And that was the moment. That was when the call was made. Not to the dead, but to something far worse. Something outside of time. Something that hurt me. I begged the voice to leave me alone, to let me go. You invited us, it said. And now, we are home. Then everything disappeared. I awoke in my apartment. Everything looked the same, but it wasn't. The air felt heavier, the walls closer. Shadows moved even when there was no light. And the phone, it was back, sitting on my kitchen table. Just sitting there, silent, watching. It hasn't rung since that night. But I know it will. Because I know now what it really is. It's not a phone. It never was. It's a teddy. A line between this world and another. A receiver to the beyond. And once you answer, you can never hang up.